Humans need animal nutrition to thrive. This has been true for all of human history and still is today. Yet somehow this has become almost taboo to mention or talk about. It is clear that the average person today has been misled when it comes to their idea of what constitutes a healthy and nourishing diet. This is mostly due to a lot of poor and misunderstood science, which led us to many terrible conclusions. We demonized the wrong things, such as saturated fat and cholesterol, while promoting things that were actually detrimental to our health, such as seed oils and grains. This wasn't some evil plan made by evil people. We simply got some things wrong and are now suffering the consequences. The unlucky part of this is that these wrong ideas and notions are still heavily ingrained into a lot of people's minds. We have been conditioned to think that fat is evil, that meat causes heart disease, and that we need to rely on grains and big quantities of vegetables in order to meet our nutritional needs. This could almost not be any more wrong and backwards. So let's take a look at some of the things that make it clear to us that we were wrong and that humans need animal nutrition in order to thrive and have optimal health. To understand this, it will be useful to first take a look at where we came from and how we developed the bodily needs that we have today. Something that I have mentioned in previous videos is that the human body should be seen as an ancient piece of hardware. This hardware has specific needs which have been determined from the food and environment of our ancestors. So what exactly did our ancestors eat, and what did we evolve on? The fact is that humans evolved from eating meat. There are 3.5 million years of meat eating which made us human and who we are today. The animals on the screen are what early humans were eating. There were plenty of these animals roaming the earth, and we could easily hunt them for life-creating nutrients, fat and protein. We know this from radioisotope nitrogen levels of early human remains. There is actually huge amounts of evidence that early humans were high trophic level carnivores. We were on the top of the food chain. We achieved this through tools and superior human intellect. This changed our whole digestive system. We evolved away from subsisting on low quality plant foods and instead required highly nutrient dense animal foods. Our small intestine got longer, which is where we extract nutrition from meat, and the hindgut got smaller, which is where plant fermentation takes place. We are a completely different species now than our ape ancestors, and we require completely different nutrition. The pH of our stomach also changed, and today resembles much more that of a carnivore species than anything else. Now there is a lot more to this story, and I'm not implying that humans never ate plant foods, because we did. The point is that we became human because of meat and animal fat. This is how our brain grew and how we eventually evolved away from other plant eaters. Our bodies evolved to thrive on meat and animal fat. Plants were a side dish or something we ate when we couldn't get an animal. Another interesting way to study this is to look at the few remaining hunter-gatherers existing today. These people offer us a unique window into our past.
The Hadzabe are a small tribe of hunter-gatherers living by Lake Eyasi in Tanzania. I asked Sokolo, the leader of this tribe of hunter-gatherers, what's the most important thing in life?
Manako.
Manako. Manako.
Manako bala.
Bala.
Ko haka kwa kakachana ihane ngana tinga komati.
I ask, what was your happiest day?
Manako la kama isho ukuwa manako.
Amusho ukuwa manako ubiya kwa fly.
Haka fly maisha kwa mana. Kitiko mana.
Kitiko mana kondo abala ko bao ngalu.
Kwa kitiko kwa kete.
I ask, what is their biggest struggle?
Labi. Manako. Manakita kwetu ukue hatse.
From this it seems pretty clear that we as humans knew the importance of animal foods throughout our entire history. So what happened then? How did we lose our ways? And how did we come to demonize the food that nourished our bodies? To put it short, we had some bad theories and did some bad science. We had a huge influx of highly processed and unnatural foods, and with it we saw immense health problems arising in most of our Western world. We then decided for the past 70 years to blame many of these health problems on the animals we had been consuming for all of human history. instead of on the newly arrived processed and unnatural foods, which we have only been eating for 0.1% of human history. We also had a heart disease epidemic in the 50s and jumped to some conclusions. A guy named Ansel Keys made a spurious correlation that heart disease was caused by a diet high in saturated fat, and the result of this was that saturated animal fat and cholesterol got wrongly demonized. This opened the door for the processed food industry, low-fat products, and the fat is bad paradigm. It also led to the food pyramid and to the call of limiting animal fat as much as possible by replacing it with highly processed vegetable oils. So what was the result of all of this? The result was that our health rapidly deteriorated as obesity and chronic disease took off. And it's not that people didn't follow the guidelines. We followed them very well. We limited our animal consumption and increased our consumption of grains, sugar, and vegetable oils. If meat is so bad for us, then why did all of our health problems start when meat and animal fat declined? Now the story about Ansel Keys and the demonization of fat is much longer. For the sake of time, I won't get too much into it in this video. Perhaps it deserves its own special video sometime in the future. Since this impactful theory made by Ansel Keys, there have been numerous studies and observations that show us how we got saturated fat wrong. And not only did we get it wrong, it seems to be the exact opposite of what has been proposed for so long. Death rate actually seems to go down with saturated fat intake, not up. We also got cholesterol wrong, and it has actually been taken off completely from the dietary guidelines today. So now that we have the historical facts out of the way, we can finally get into the actual nutrition of animal foods and why it's so valuable to our health. The nutritional aspects of meat when compared to plants is another highly misunderstood topic today. This is mainly due to the bioavailability aspect. Plants have a much lower bioavailability of nutrients than animal foods. When you eat plant foods, the nutrients have to be converted because they are merely precursors and not actually the available nutrients that our bodies need. What it says on the nutritional label of your vegetables is simply false in almost all cases, because the vitamins and other nutrients they tell you are in those plants are simply not converted to their available vitamins inside of the human body and digestive system. An example of this would be something like carrots. Many people will tell you that carrots are a good source of vitamin A, but this is a misunderstanding. Carrots have beta-carotene, which is a precursor to vitamin A, and this has to be converted to retinol, which is the form of vitamin A that our bodies need. This conversion process is extremely poor in humans, and a big portion of people can't even convert it at all. Animal foods, on the other hand, are the only ones to have retinol, the bioavailable form of vitamin A. So they tell you that carrots have vitamin A, but they don't tell you that it's a plant precursor and that it can't be converted. Another good example of this is the highly important and essential fatty acid called omega-3. Omega-3 is one of the only dietary nutrients that can pass through the blood-brain barrier, which is why it can have profound effects on mental performance and brain health. Omega-3 is needed for humans in the form called DHA. DHA is found in high amounts in things like seafood and in lesser amounts in things like grass-fed beef, dairy, and high-quality eggs. Now, some people in mainstream circles will tell you that you can get adequate amounts of omega-3 from plant foods, such as nuts, flax seeds, and algae supplements. However, just as with the carrots, what you are getting is actually a plant precursor called ALA. This again has to be converted to the form available to our bodies. The conversion of ALA into DHA is pretty much non-existent at 2 to 4%. This might explain the profound experience some previous vegans have when they eat foods high in DHA for the first time since going vegan. Like these people, for example.
When I ate that salmon, I sat there. Man, I want to cry tears of joy right now. I sat there and it felt like somebody got a bucket of oil and just poured it over my brain, you guys. I cannot describe that feeling to you.
Oh my gosh. I'm not trying to over-exaggerate or overact right now, but when you have suppressed vital nutrients to your body and to your brain, and when you get that for the first time, it's like a boom, it's like a hit. It's like a dopamine, you know?
And then I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna go to sleep. You know? So I went to sleep. Slept like a rock at the bottom of the ocean, okay? The best sleep I'd had in 5 years. Oh my gosh. I woke up the next day like, boom, dale.
And I finally felt grounded. Like I felt like pulled back to earth. And it was such an amazing feeling. I cried, guys. Like I legitimately cried after eating this omelet. And I think I'm gonna cry now about it because it was that powerful of an experience. It was just the final just like release of like, this is it. I'm finally going to recover.
And then salmon happened. I had my first bite of smoked salmon, wild caught, and it was like taking drugs. I mean, it really was. My pupils lit up, my body came alive.
I sat there as that oil, those omega-3s are real in every sense of the way. I don't need a scientific study to tell me nada. I know that it's real, okay? I don't need a scientific study to tell me that. I know it's real. I felt that oil and it went straight to my brain. It went straight to my brain. It felt like it didn't go anywhere else. It went to my brain first.
We went to a restaurant and I had a chicken. Like everybody else, I can't even describe what happened to me. I was like, you know, like my eyes went like this, you know, like a cat when you open a cat can or you give them a piece of meat. I was like, this is incredible. And I just finished the chicken.
How can you feel instantly better from just eating an egg? But now I experienced it myself. I just felt amazing right away after. Within 3 days, I just had a constant smile on my face. I was so happy. I had zero negative thoughts. I didn't went into a negative thought cycle once.
It was just, I cried. I cried because I realized what that little pop in my brain was weeks ago. The fat was leaving me.
I started with eggs. You know, it's easy, just buy a couple eggs and you fry them up, and I really noticed I felt a lot better. Like there was just something inside me that felt like, wow, one egg. Who knew? Like an egg a day. Like, you know, the apple a day keeps the doctor away. It's an egg a day. Like, honestly, I felt really good. It must have been the cholesterol.
And that morning I ate quail eggs. I ate those eggs and man, I felt my spirit go boom. Like it was like something hit me like a wind, just bam. I cannot describe it. You only know it when you experience it.
And when I would eat that meat, I would feel like life was being put back into me.
So the first time that I eat again, meat, let's better say animal products, because yeah, it was eggs. You feel like brutal, but hey man, I'm alive now, you know, and slowly even my brain starts to be alive again.
And from there it just poured down my face, into my arms, into my chest, my thighs, and down my legs, into my feet. I literally felt my brain say, ah.
And I said, no, let's do it. I'm craving meat. I want to see if this makes a difference to my headaches. I want to see if this makes a difference to my energy. And within 2 days of incorporating eggs, meat back into my diet, my headaches didn't completely go away, but they 90% massively subsided, which was insane to me. My energy, my libido came back. Insane. Within 2 days of incorporating that back.
I will never forget that feeling. It literally felt like my body was just like, thank you, you know? Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for giving me what I need to survive.
So as you can see, the introduction of animal foods, and especially DHA, can have profound effects on people who have long been deprived of essential nutrition. This is because plants have a much lower bioavailability of nutrients, and we simply can't get the same nutrition from them as we can from animal foods. Actually, it's not even close. Even what is listed on the package of the plant foods you buy is wrong. In order to realize this, we have to actually understand how these things work and convert inside of our bodies. Red meat and things like eggs actually provide the most nutrient-dense and complete nutrition on Earth, yet people have been deceived into thinking it will give them cancer and that broccoli is 10 times as nutrient-dense. We could also talk about the anti-nutrients in plant foods, which are the way plants defend themselves. Plants are alive, and they want to stay alive so they can reproduce just like animals do. However, plants don't have the option of running away or fighting you when you try to eat them, so they turn to other things such as anti-nutrients in order to defend themselves. The high amount of anti-nutrients in plant foods can actually become very damaging if eaten in high amounts, and they can cause horrible complications such as leaky gut syndrome. Now, all of this may sound like I'm advocating for some sort of carnivore diet, or that humans are only supposed to be eating meat. However, that is not at all what I'm saying. I myself eat a diet that's relatively high in plant foods, but at the same time I realize the role that these plant foods have in my diet, and it really isn't an important one, at least nowhere near as important as the nutrient-dense animal products I'm also consuming. Isolated indigenous groups seemed aware of the life-creating nutrients that resided in the animal products they consumed, and they didn't need scientific studies to tell them this. They knew from direct experience. In the early 1900s, a dentist named Weston Price traveled the world to study the health and diets of various isolated indigenous groups. Weston Price noted that all of these isolated groups subsisted on very natural diets high in animal nutrition. He also noted how these people had amazing physiques, brilliant facial and bone structure, and perfect dental arches. These people were also completely disease-free and lived happy and natural lives. Or in the words of Weston Price himself, one stands impressed by the superior types of manhood, womanhood, childhood, and physical development that nature has been able to produce from a suitable diet and a suitable environment. Weston Price would also note how the health of these people would almost immediately deteriorate once the Western world would come in with their modern foods and other commodities. The teeth and facial development would suffer, and disease would start to run rampant. All of this is covered in Weston Price's book called Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, and serves as yet another proof of how important animal nutrition is for optimal health. Let me also remind you here that pretty much all of the fruits and vegetables in supermarkets today are recent man-made inventions. The way that these fruits and vegetables occurred in their wild forms were vastly different to the ones we find in our supermarkets. This has been achieved through years of artificial selection and genetic modification, which has provided us with these plant foods as we know them today. These foods were not eaten by our ancestors. In fact, if your ancestor would try to eat something like a wild carrot, the person would probably become very sick due to how toxic it was. The same goes for many other of the plant foods as we know them today. Now, this doesn't make these plant foods inherently bad for us, however they certainly shouldn't be perceived as natural. They were not what our ancestors were feeding on, because they didn't exist. We could go on and on in this fashion for hours, but I hope you can see the big picture of why animal nutrition is absolutely crucial if you want to thrive as a Homo sapien. These animals literally upcycle nutrients from plants and make them bioavailable to us. We should be grateful and embracing of this, instead of trying to shoot it down. Many people today have ethical or environmental concerns when it comes to eating animal foods. If you don't want to consume animals because of ethical reasons, that's obviously going to be your own decision and not something I would try to argue out of you. All I would say is this. Animals seem to be what nature intended for humans to eat in order to thrive. And if you have ethical concerns about this, I wonder what else you would be eating with that mindset. Because hundreds of thousands of animals are also killed to produce the plant foods that you would have to eat instead. 25% more sentient animals die producing crops. Not to mention how many habitats and entire ecosystems which are devastated in clearing the land for monocropping. The virtue signaling of eating plants because you care about the suffering of animals is merely a delusion. If you really cared about the suffering of animals, you would be out in the forest foraging your own foods. Animals are going to die for any food that we are going to produce, so might as well choose what gives you the best nutrition. Honestly, our ancestors would probably laugh or maybe cry, about how we literally go out of our way to avoid eating animal products today. They literally spend all of their life force hunting and worshipping animal nutrition, just so you would be here today. Humans, animals, plants and bacteria have all evolved together, and we can't just take one out of the equation and expect there to be no consequences. Animals such as cows are nature's miracle. They are part of a natural and beautiful cycle. And no, the cows are not ruining the environment. The fact that we're even talking about animal agriculture when it comes to greenhouse gases and climate change is one big smokescreen, because the real problem is fossil fuels. These three industries on the screen are 80% of the emissions. If people really cared about stopping climate change through the food we eat, they would tell people to stop eating potato chips, which is the #1 producer of greenhouse gases. Meanwhile, the methane cows produce is again part of a cycle. It's a flow gas that's recycled, meaning it goes from the grass into the cow, into the air, and then back into the grass. Also, 85% of the land used for grazing cattle can't be farmed. What would we even do with all of this land? We could also talk about the soil. Plants and crops mainly take from the soil, while animals give back to the soil. Plants take nutrients and need fossil fuel input. Animals give back to the soil with their urine and manure. Cows on pasture revitalize entire ecosystems by making sure the soil is nutritious and fertile. The health of a nation is extremely dependent on its soil, because this is where carbon is concealed. What is actually ruining the soil is the constant tilling we are doing in order to grow crops. This releases huge amounts of carbon into the air and makes the soil dry and nutrient depleted. Many farms who participate in regenerative agriculture are using animals on pasture and are actually putting more carbon into the soil than they are producing. Once again, animals raised in proper conditions are part of a natural and beautiful cycle. We should be embracing this. Also, I would ask people who argue against the consumption of animal nutrition and animal agriculture, what's the alternative? There simply is no good one. The alternative is that we would just have to grow millions more acres of pesticide-soaked corn, wheat and soy. People talk about meat like there is some magical free source of food with no impact. But we don't have another way to grow enough food to replace meat. And also this food is nowhere near being a good replacement nutritionally. So how are you going to spend your time on this wonderful earth? By being so obsessed about suffering and 21st century ethical beliefs that you compromise your own health? Or by growing up, accepting the reality of nature and start playing by its rules? If there is one thing that I want to leave you with, it's that you have been deceived. Animals are the answer to our health and environmental concerns, not the cause. And until we learn this, we will be stuck in a perpetual state of working against nature. This never ends well as far as I'm aware. Thanks for watching and stay healthy.